Hello everybody, and I am your teacher today because your normal teacher couldn't make it. So I'll share my screen. And so here we're gonna first start with the 63A. It's a little slow. Let me refresh the page. Okay, so uh, in this chapter, the the pawn sacrificed e5 to e6, so somewhere along the lines of e5, e6 can have a destructive effect on black's development and seriously undermine the king's safety. The sacrifice at its most dangerous is early in the game before black has mobilized. So this is the modern, I think, the modern opening. So, and the white plays e5 right away, and after c5, e6. So what e6 does is, first of all, it kind of limits the bishop's options because it kind of has to stay on c8 once white plays knight g5 because it's attacking the e6 pawn, and now the bishop is pinned to defend the pawn. So I'll just show you. F takes e6 and knight g5 right away. Now he'll play knight df6, and that opens up the bishop to protect the pawn. And he can also play knight f8. So knight f8 defends it 2 times, but there's really not much good that can come from knight f8. So d takes c5. It's kind of similar to the game with d takes c5, and well, this is where the variation ends. And you can see here that it's going to be pretty similar, and well, I think it's pretty good for white because once he if white castles, maybe castling isn't such a good move. Maybe something like queen e2, and you're threatening to take this pawn, and if he takes his pawn back, you just take this one, and well, the king has only one a little bit of shelter, and it's pretty bad. So does everyone understand? Right. Okay. Cool. Now on knight g5, there's another move, and that is bishop takes d4. Before he played knight f8, and it was the d takes c5 line. So bishop takes d4, knight takes e6, and taking back the pawn just gives white already a very big advantage. And if he tries to double your pawns, because going back to f6 is just going to make it worse. And like the comment here, it'll clog black's development. So bishop f6 won't be that great. Instead, bishop takes c3, b takes a3, and then queen a5. And it's okay for black, but still pretty bad. You can just play bishop b7 or b2 or d2. probably d2. And you can maybe, attack on the king side. c4 isn't that good. So back to knight g5, knight f6, and it defends the pawn. D takes c5, and d takes c5 is a huge blunder. Now here, black should have played knight h6, just kind of ignoring the threat, and he would stay safe because it wouldn't open the d file. Now he can just play knight f5 and he'll be fine. Now, can anyone tell me what's the next move after d takes c5? You gotta choose someone.
I don't know.
Well, it has something to do with these two pawns, and you're gonna have to sacrifice one of these two pieces.
I think you should go bishop takes or knight takes, either knight takes h7 or bishop takes g6.
It's better to go knight takes h7 first, because that removes the defender of the g6 pawn, and white can just take the pawn, and the queen will have to be separated from the king, and you can just take the queen. So here he either plays knight takes h7 or rook takes. It doesn't really matter. And he can also play queen d6.
I have a question. What happens if he doesn't take the knight?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's basically what queen d6 does. Then you can just play this, and he still has a pretty bad position. I think maybe you can play something like this. And, well, there should be a lot more moves. I just can't really think of them yet. But yeah, it should be pretty good for white after this, because he's already up 2 pawns from the declined sacrifices. So knight takes h7, and knight takes h7, bishop takes g6, and the game is over. So that was basically how e5 to e6 is a very good move. And it blocked the bishop from developing, and it also kind of made the knights hard to develop too. So now there's another variation in the same game. Not the same. No, it's a different game, but with the same, idea. Here, e6, and can anyone tell me why bishop takes e6 is bad?
Because of pawn to d5 and the fork.
Yeah. So f takes e6, and now his king is again exposed. So now he just plays bishop e3. I guess that's just for developing, and d5. And now you can just see this bishop is pretty good. But if he develops somewhere else like f4, I think he can just play g6 and bishop g7. He can go for e5 sometime. So bishop e3 is better. Now e5, d5, and knight takes, pawn takes, and bishop takes. So he got rid of the doubled pawn, but white is now threatening queen h5, and g6 loses because of bishop takes h8. So now e5, and it's basically just lost. Here you can just go with queen h5, even castling and bringing more pieces, but That'd be a little slow. So yeah, white is winning here. And this idea is called two pieces can be worth a queen. And basically what that's saying is that you can sometimes sacrifice your queen for two pieces if you calculate it and see that your two pieces are very strong, like these two bishops and these two knights. So in this game, it was someone called John Spielman or something. I don't really remember. But he played d4, and this is actually a sacrifice. Can anyone tell me how black can win a pawn?
By just like simply taking the pawn with his pawn, I guess.
Okay. And now over here, how do you win a queen for black?
Black win a queen?
It's
You go knight to g4 check.
Yeah. And now
It's a discovery.
yeah, the check. So after d4, he takes. And he did do that, but it's a pretty nice idea because now he only has two pieces. He has an extra knight and a bishop, but he can just easily make threats, and these three pieces aren't that useful. So here he played c5 and rook e8 and knight d5, threatening knight f6. So he played f6 because here, even though he's up a lot of material, there's not many ways that he can prevent knight f6. I think if he plays this rook e6, you can just play knight b6 or something like that, and well, it doesn't really look pretty. f6, knight e3, queen b5, and then c takes d6. Queen e2, his idea is to attack the bishop, but he just plays bishop c3. And he takes a few pawns, but it's not really gonna matter. And now he's again attacking the f6 pawn, and he's probably gonna have to give up something. He first attacks the rook, but he just blocks it, and now the queen is kind of getting moved all over the place. And now it's just kind of like white slowly crushing black. And he doesn't really even have to do much. He just keeps moving pieces. And knight takes d5. Can anyone tell me the winning sequence? This one's a little hard, but
I think you should first go h takes g5.
yeah.
Rook e7.
Rook e7, I don't think because
Oh, he can just block, you're right. Wait, can you go back? I think I did it. Rook h1. Sorry, rook h1.
yeah. And
Move. And then you go rook h8 checkmate. Not check.
Basically after this, you can see rook takes g6, a little different, and rook g7. Now, once he plays king e6, it's just going to be checkmate, somewhere along the lines. Well, yeah, here, and then rook takes. I somehow didn't see that. But yeah, And now moving on to the 65th. This is going to be about the fantasy variation, which is a variation in the Caro-Kann. And this is for white after e4, c6, and this is called the Caro-Kann. It's kind of similar to the French.
Open up an opening for your queen, like really early. Really early as in first move.
You mean here and then what?
I meant black opens like a path for their queen, like really early. Like really early.
But that's not really the main point of this opening. The main point is it's kind of like the French with e6, and a pretty annoying thing in the French is that black has a very bad bishop on c8. So what he's doing with c6 is that he doesn't limit the bishop on the first move. And here it's not really, this is not really the fantasy, but you can see now that the bishop can move everywhere. Instead in the French, now after this, the bishop can only go to d7, and it's not really good there. And there are a lot more reasons why the Caro-Kann is similar but not similar to the French. But those are that is the main point. Now after d4, d5, this is called the fantasy variation. I don't know why it's called fantasy, but I guess it's like a lot of attacking lines and stuff. It's just very aggressive. And the most common response is to play d takes e4. And after that you play e5, which is a pretty good line because after d takes e5, you just play queen h4. So you have to remember that when you play the e5, you can never play d takes e5. Instead, you have to play knight f3. And after knight f3, e takes d4. And then here you can also play bishop e6. I don't really know why. It's not really good. And you just don't be that greedy. You have to use the pawn to take if you really want a pawn, and it's not that good. These are isolated pawns, which means that they're not going to be protected by any other pawn. And they're also doubled, so they're going to be extremely easy to take off. So black can maybe play knight d7, first attacking this pawn, and then g6, using the other bishop to pile on. So after c3, knight d7, and bishop d3. And you kind of just continue with the normal game. Well, there's not really much to say about this position. It's pretty balanced. And so instead of bishop e6, the main line is e takes, and then you don't take the pawn immediately, and you may never will, especially after bishop e4 and c3. But after bishop c4, there are two more options. Bishop e6, offering to trade, and bishop takes c6, takes, and this is kind of pointless. You just have knight g5, and his king side is already very weakened. Now after bishop e7, I guess he's trying to go a little less aggressive, but it's too passive. Just play castle, and again his king side is very weak. And the open f files is very useful because usually it looks like the open f file is bad for the king, but in a lot of cases it's very good because now the rook is opened say if he plays something like this, you just take this and you have 2 defenders and he only has 2 attackers. So it's really bad for black. Knight takes f7 anyways, even if you didn't play e5. Rook takes and then bishop takes. And how do you win more pieces here? Like, how do you justify that sacrifice? Which is like 2 pieces for a rook is not really a good trade in most cases. So if white if your opponent tries to take on f2 with like a bishop and a knight and he has no tactic, it's a pretty bad deal. So how do you win extra material here?
I think you no, you have to go e5.
Yeah, and the pin and the attacking. So he's gonna lose 3 pieces for a rook and a pawn. No, he's gonna lose. No, he's gonna. Oops. He's gonna lose 2 minor pieces. A rook and a knight for 2 minor pieces. Sorry. Bishop b4 and c3. D takes c3 and bishop takes f7. And now the king has to take. Queen takes d8. And you're just. It looks like you're winning, but there's actually a pretty smart sequence for black. But after bishop takes f7, he can also play king e7, holding on to the queen. But you just play queen b3, and his position is pretty bad. Because after this, you just take with check, and you're okay. And this may have been kind of revealing for how black wins here, but give it a try. Well, not win. How does black regain the material and then lose?
How does black regain the material?
Yeah.
I think you should go c2 check.
C2 doesn't work because you can only take knight, and that's going to be taken off immediately. And well, why I said loses because knight g5 I think is crushing, or at least somewhat. I don't really know, but the correct move is c takes b2, and well, yeah.
But that doesn't work because the rook will just take. You have to take the rook.
You have to take the rook. I'm kind of thinking of how white will win this. If he can. He should be, yeah. Cool. Knight g5. For some reason, when I turn on the engine, how you move the pieces sometimes feel weird. Oh, and then, well, this just wins. So it's mainly queen e8. Oh, it was already there. Oh. Well, yeah. That's the first 2 lines. There are 2 more, and the second one is the same for the first 3 moves, but now he plays e5. Now e5 looks like a very weird move. He's just giving a pawn for free, but it's actually okay because after bishop c5, your king is kind of weak, and he could be threatening queen b6 and a lot of stuff. It's kind of like a gamble. Now knight c3, queen b6, and knight a4. Now you play queen a5, and this kind of looks like black's gonna win a knight. But he just plays c3, and you take you defend the knight. Instead of here bishop takes g1, I guess this is maybe, I don't know, this is actually a very complicated line, but I guess this is pretty good. The knight can't really do anything because it's gone, and it's just up to these 3 pieces, which won't be good. And now instead of bishop takes g1, bishop e7. Now this looks a lot more passive than it is. And now e takes d5, d6, bishop h4. And sadly, it's not so passive. So what's the material here? 3 minor pieces, 3 minor pieces. So it's pretty much even. But he can just play bishop e2, and it's still pretty good. e4, queen c7, and queen takes e5, queen e2, and b5, knight a5, knight d4, and it's just a pretty long line. But in the end, you get an open file on a4, the a file, and these doubled pawns aren't that bad. You can use them for attacking a lot. And you're also up a pawn. So I'll just play it till the end of the variation. Well, this is actually a game. Oh yeah, I'll just go to the end, and rook takes c5, and the game ends because, can anyone tell me how white wins?
King takes c5.
Yeah.
Yeah, fork the knight d3. Take the rook.
And now why is
And then you continue pushing your pawn until the end.
rook takes g1, d takes e4, bishop f4, and f takes e4. So now you have these 2 double pawns, which can be a little annoying. But I think it's fine. You can just play b4, and it's pretty good compensation for bad pawn structure. Castle b4, and you traded queens, but g3, b6, and white's doing pretty fine. And to knight d4, you can just take another pawn, but you just take this pawn, and well, your pieces are basically dominating. You have a lot of space, and yeah, it's just pretty good for white. And it's a pretty good deal, especially for, well, these 2 pawns. So now for the last line, it's a little shorter because it's not that good. And the e6 is basically a wasted move. You should have just played the French if you want to play e6 so early. So now e6, knight c3, or bishop e3. And well, bishop e3 kind of transposes. So knight c3, bishop e4. Instead, you can play knight f6, e5, and you just expanding in the center in a comfortable way. So bishop b4, bishop e3, and a3. Here, if you play this, he'll just play queen h4. And that's basically the biggest problem with the fantasy variation. a3, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and queen a5. So well, it's pretty good. Just take on f3, knight f6, knight d5, and wait, why am I doing black? I'm kind of looking at blacks. Forget I said that. So white has queen d2 and, well, knight f3. I guess it's kind of balanced for both sides. But e6 isn't a really good move anyways, so what I would recommend for black, if you want to play the fantasy, although this is about white, is that you should play bishop d4. So in the last variations, it only recommended e takes d4, and what else? It was something like oh yeah, it was e5. It was later, before. But I think bishop g4 here is the best if you want to play the Caro-Kann like this. D takes e5, knight d7, bishop e3, and queen c7. Although this is still a very long variation, and white has a lot of tricks. So I'd say the fantasy variation is dynamically balanced. Well, that's all the material, but I'll make you do some puzzles, I guess.
I have a question. Why is your lead chess like that?
Oh, I got a, what do you call it? An extension called Pretty Relief Chess. You can put, it looks better. Okay, so puzzles. Oh yeah, I'm on the wrong theme. Damn it. Oh, it's background. I think I have to select dark, and yes, it's better now. So, oops, I kind of sandbagged the puzzle rating too low. I was teaching the other class some time ago. So I'm gonna make you do the hardest. That should be about 2,000. What puzzle ratings do you guys do? Do you do puzzles?
I just do it at normal or hard. I usually do it normal.
Well, what's your rating?
I don't remember.
Well, just say harder, because I'll be 1900. That should be fine. So here, how does white win?
Bishop takes f7.
Yeah.
And then rook takes, and then rook takes rook.
Yeah, that'll be enough. It'll take a long time to adjust. Not that long. You just got 50 points. Here.
I maybe you should do bishop takes c4. I don't see any other move but bishop takes c4 or bishop takes.
Now what?
And then you go pawn to b5.
Yeah. The point is that you just take and you won a piece for a pawn. So, what about this position?
Knight takes f7. Knight takes f7. I think it has to be knight takes f7. Bishop takes f7. He can just do knight takes f7.
Oh yeah.
It's the same as knight takes f7. It doesn't really work because there are two. It's something else.
Queen takes b7.
Yeah. And it's a fork. So just take the knight. Okay, so this one is basically queen f3, and the idea is another fork, because now you're trying to take the knight and mate. So I'm just thinking of something else. There's still 8 minutes until class is over, so I'll just see if there's something like this. How about checkmate patterns? So mate in one.
Mate in one, you have to go knight to e7 checkmate.
Yeah. I turned the engine.
This one should be bishop h6.
Oh. I don't think this. I'll just need like If I do
Okay,
It's
cool.
fine,
We
it's
can do
fine.
puzzle streak. Let's do puzzle streak.
yes, hard.
I know this one. It's knight takes f7. f6. And then you take the queen. You should just take the rook with your king. That's the simplest puzzle in the history of chess. And then now push your pawn, d pawn.
There are way more
Actually not sure. Oh, wait, never mind. You just take the bishop, don't you? With material?
Exact. See now, the king is limited. Only this square.
D6.
Oh, yeah, rook c, and then you take the bishop. Oh, queen takes h6. Queen e8. Rook takes G2. Queen to D2.
Again, there's time limits when it gets harder.
Queen takes D5. Don't. Oh, wow.
Bishop X7.
Bishop D7, then he can just take your rook. Can't he?
Well, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
It'll take a while for it to get really hard. Because right now we're only at 1300. And Lichess puzzle ratings are inflated. This one is gonna involve the rook and the queen.
Bishop XC2.
Yeah,
Rook C1.
and now you just win material. This one's a maiden 2.
Queen F7 and then Queen F7 and then yeah.
This one is related to promotion.
C7.
And yeah. So let's take the bishop.
Rook G8.
And you unpin the rook. Maiden 2 again.
Take pawn. Pawn take G4.
That's not right. It's the other pawn.
G5.
Yeah.
Pawn G5.
And then this one will be sort of a pin on the D file.
D4.
Yeah. Okay, well, he didn't pin. Okay, it's time to wrong. Oops. Why is it so slow? Might be Zoom. Okay, so it's you guys are in intermediate, right? I think so. Ooh, kind of close. But you guys are all there already. So I'll give you the link in the chat and here.